Okay. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
This is the final Lemez discussion. I can't believe we got to the end of this. I was so sad when we touched the end of it. Like, when did that happen? I also felt like I had no purpose. I felt like my reading purpose life was gone.
Yes, I know it's been.
How do I booktube now?
Yes.
What do I read? I have too many books, but what do I read?
Yeah, I felt the same.
When you're reading something for more than 2 months, it becomes a fixture.
Yeah.
Oh goodness. Yeah. Hi, Tiffany.
Hi,
Tiffany. Woot woot.
Our Lemez party. This is our survival. We did it party. Oh, I can't. Yeah, I'm seriously still in shock that we finished it and we all got through together. Because I know I would have needed the push a lot. Like, there are many times I was reading it and being like, I need to read it for deadline time.
I for sure would not have finished it without this read along, because by the end I was like, oh, I'm reading 4 different Russian books at once. But wait, I should finish Les Mis because the live stream's coming up.
Yeah, it's easy to get sidetracked with a big book like this.
Yeah,
like going alongside other things, it's easy to just put it down.
Yes,
especially when you get those big problems, but at the same time, it was totally worth it.
Yes, it really was.
The payoff was very much there.
Yes, that ending. I had seen one of the movies, one of the adaptions, and the ending was so different.
Yes, the ending was so different. I was very surprised by that. There's a lot more to the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, and the ending, it feels like it's just so sped up in regards to the ending when it comes to like the film versions, because they're like, oh, look, everyone dies, and then suddenly it's like, boom, the end. And it's like, that's just so close to the beginning of the last section we read. And then we go through everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Man. So many things that were going on in this book. I don't even know where to start.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. I started way back at like 80% or something, like when we were, or like 79% or something. So I was reading way back from the last section still. So a lot happened in the last 2 weeks.
Yes, it would.
We learned a lot about sewers.
Yes, my goodness, the sewers. I honestly feel like Hugo's trying to detract people from reading Lemez sometimes, but then when you push through those things, it's so wonderful.
Yeah, that is the weird thing about this reading experience, is that there are like no books that I would say, yeah, you could read the abridged version and be fine. And like, this is maybe one of them, but I also don't necessarily, I still hesitate to say that, because I still think the original text is valuable, but there are just a lot of rabbit trails. So I don't know if you felt like that detracted from the book for you at all, or if you kind of don't mind them so much. I'm curious.
That's a good question.
Yeah. I feel like some of them I didn't mind because I did learn a lot, and I felt like I learned a lot about Hugo through the actual process, even if I didn't care about the content I was reading. So in that regard, it didn't take away from it. And at the end, I felt like I had to give it a 5-star because I don't give like half stars. But if I was going to be honest, it'd probably be like a 4.5. So not quite a full 5 because of how often I was like feeling I had to push through those sections.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I feel like I learned a lot about him, the author, through that reading experience. So it's an interesting balance. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about you, Christy?
Oh man, like on audio, because I didn't have time to like actually sit down and read the whole thing, I did end up kind of mentally wandering during a lot of those rabbit trails, and it was kind of like, okay, come on, please, can we get back to the story? And I wasn't looking forward to listening to it again. But like I have a feeling that if I was sitting and reading it, it would be like 100% completely loved it, no qualms, even though there's a lot that, you know, he could have cut out. I also thought it was really beautiful and informative, and I enjoyed it whenever I sat down to read it. So it's really hard because I know my experience would have been different if I had read the whole thing physically. So it's so long, but it's also going to be one of my favorite books of the year. So
yeah,
I give it a 90 out of 100.
Yeah, I'm conflicted in that too. Like parts of it are like, yes, this is one of like some of the best writing I've ever read, and then other parts of it were like, I just want to get through this. So I think for me, I'd have to give it a 4-star, even though I'm like, so much of this book is like 5 stars, but I think overall, like if I look at the whole picture, it would be 4 stars for me. I know, scandalous.
no, I was thinking because Tiffany just said she read the whole thing physically, which is like,
yeah.
Whoa. So I think if we had,
Tiffany.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think since all of us listened to some of it.
Absolutely.
I went in and out, physical and audio.
Same, yeah.
Yeah, and then they did help with context. I do agree with that. They did help with that. Although when it came to slang, I definitely just lit through it and didn't even listen really. I listened while I brushed my teeth and showered, so I didn't even really pay attention. So
yeah, some of my listening was definitely half listening.
So when it came to that thing, but otherwise, yeah, I listened and it was really interesting to learn about the background and how that applied to other stuff. When it came to future sections. So in a way, yeah, it definitely impacts the overall experience. Although during those sections, you're like, can we get through it yet? At times, at least.
I'm glad I physically read the ending because that was, I think,
me too.
That was worth it to read with your eyeballs.
Yeah.
And like you said, Victoria, reading the abridged version, it's kind of like, it would be like, oh, but I'm missing, it really would be missing something, I think, if you just read some abridged version.
Yeah, I would probably still recommend people read the entire thing with like a caveat of like, hey, there are some sections that, you know, if they're really detracting from your enjoyment, that could technically be skipped.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I would feel comfortable saying that.
Yes, 100%.
I feel like people in my life who've been asking about it, I've been telling them, like, if you read it and you feel like you're getting to Waterloo and you're like, when is this going to end? Just skip it. Like, I've told them that. Or like, if you're getting to the convent section and you're like, when is this going to end? Just skip it because it's not critical to the plot. So I've been telling them that too. Yeah, I do think they add something, but it's also something that if it's going to bog you down, that's not the plot. That's just adding to the content, like context maybe.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like, what level of difficulty are you ready for at this point? Totally. If you're super intimidated, skip some stuff.
Totally.
But like, if you're like Tiffany and you're like, okay, I can plow through those, then cool. You're probably going to enjoy some of it, you know, to some degree.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. Hi, Amanda.
Hi, Amanda.
We are talking about how we feel about all the different sections and the sloggy parts. Yeah. No, I definitely feel like this is a book where you can go on like easy, medium, or hard level. Like easy is the abridged, mediums where you read the whole thing and then just skip the sections you don't like, and hard is like you just go through it the whole thing, like we all did.
Yeah. Tammy gives it 4 stars too. Woo! 4-star club.
Woo.
Yeah, there's a lot of like, I think 4 and up is like just a great record for this. Like, there's a reason why it's so highly rated.
Yes.
And no one seems to dislike it. At least if you get through it and don't DNF it, you enjoy it a lot because it has such a quality there.
Yes, quality.
Yeah, exactly. Skip the sections that are bogging you down and get through the rest, or get through the ones that you are enjoying. Because
Tiffany, if you like nonfiction mixed in with your fiction, read the unabridged.
Yeah,
that's true.
I did actually think the tours were really interesting. I actually thought that was kind of fascinating, just because it's not something I've ever thought about, like how they're built, the history of and like how important they would be to a society. That was actually a section that I was like, this is interesting, but also too long. But interesting.
Yeah.
It's too long.
No, and I mean, I genuinely thought that Hugo would be like, oh, Hugo or Javert thought about going into the sewers, but he didn't, and that's why we talked about the sewers. So then, when actually we spent a lot of time in the sewers, I was like, okay, at least we had a reason to go into the sewers for a long discussion. Because if it had literally been, oh, maybe I'll go there, but I won't, then that would have been a waste of time.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But wow. Honestly, Valjean in that whole section, I feel so attached to him. He is just the biggest teddy bear ever. And he doesn't want to come off like that. Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then Gavroche.
Oh,
huh?
When he died.
Gavroche. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. That was wow. I was like, why are you shooting cannonballs at a child? What is wrong with you?
As he's singing and picking up
He's singing.
picking up ammo.
Yeah.
So awful.
I was smiling and like crying because I was expecting it, but I was like, this kid is going down the way he loves life.
Mm-hmm. I definitely read that as like the sacrifice of innocence, you know, that war kills the innocence, and the pure. Gavroche was like this kind of symbol for that.
Totally. Yeah. There's a sci-fi retelling of Lemez.
Oh yeah. I just got that from the library, but I sent it back because I was like, not right now. Later.
Not ready.
That sounds so interesting. What is it called?
Yeah.
I heard that there was another retelling of, well, it might be the same one, but there's a retelling as well that I was wanting to check out. And I can't remember now. I want to look it up before here, but I forgot. So maybe I'll check it out later and put in the Discord. But
maybe that should be a read for all of us, like a buddy read. We're all interested.
Yeah. So much needless death in this section.
So, Sky Without Stars.
Sky Without Stars. Yeah. Finally found it.
Yeah, I have to look for that. Cool.
So I did want to look up retellings because this is something that would have a lot of retellings that would be worthwhile, but I haven't heard of many.
And now we can enjoy them fully.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I always feel like I need to read the source material in order to understand the retelling.
Mm-hmm.
And this one is one where it's like that source material is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And we went hard mode. Yes.
There we go. Court of Miracles. That's the one I was thinking of. Thank you, Amanda. That's also the one I saw floating around, I think, on BookTube last year, or maybe it was 2 years ago. Anyways, it came out and it was pretty highly praised, I think. So now I don't have to research it.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Jean. I always call him Jean Valjean. I don't know where I got this name. I think I was just pronouncing it, you know. Jean Valjean. You were talking about him earlier, and like it stands out to me how many times he like plays somebody else, takes on a new persona, and when you know dang, Marius, when he finally like puts it all together with Thénardier's help, it's just like nobody understood that until now, and it's so frustrating that Cassette never understood it, you know. But he's such a full character. What a character.
Valjean is such a chameleon. There we go. He's such a chameleon when it comes to like picking up a new persona, when it comes to in the sewers, and Thénardier's like, here, give me half his money and I'll help get you out. And it's like he's suddenly a criminal getting out this dead body, and it's like he never even says a word about it, and it's like, okay, I'll pretend to be someone who's smuggling out a corpse. It's like he just instantly
He's like
takes
a
on
legendary
these
figure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I enjoy about his character is his level of secrets and how like different people know different things about him, but no one really knows everything about him until more like the end before he's about to die. So
Yeah.
it's interesting how he kind of has filled these roles throughout his life, but is never fully known by the people closest to him until the very end. And that's what makes him a bit tragic, I feel, is that he's not really known by the people who are close to him.
He hides so much of himself away. And he only becomes truly known literally in like the last couple pages. Which is so sad. Because that's all he really wants to be, is known and loved for who he is, I think.
Yeah.
He's always hiding that.
He feels like it would be damaging to others if he doesn't hide it.
Yeah. And Thénardier is just such an interesting character throughout the entire story. He's always helping in the most unique situations. And like the weirdest situations.
I didn't expect him to appear like right there at the very end. Thénardier. I was like, oh, he's back. Okay.
And he's back to prove that Valjean's an awful criminal.
Yeah.
And you know, he has as many personas as Jean Valjean. They both do the persona thing. It just occurred to me.
That's a good observation.
I bet there's some symbolism in there somehow.
Undoubtedly.
Because this really frustrated me because Marius continually trusted Thénardier throughout this book, even though he knew that he was not a good person, but like didn't trust Cosette's father. Like the person who raised Cosette, no, I'm not going to trust him, even though he was a convict at one point. But Thénardier, you know, he saved my father on a battlefield, so I'll forgive him anything and send him money. Like that frustrated me so much. But in the end, it's all reversed because Hugo is the king of reversals.
Yeah. It's just, an interesting reveal. And I guess it just shows in a way how Marius is so naive. Almost. Like, he just automatically assumes that Valjean's just obviously a villain because he takes out Javert to be shot. Like, he wants to go and kill Javert right away. When they're like, okay, it's time to kill the spy. He's like, I'll do it. It's like, and then he instantly is like, you're a villain. It's like, really? Everyone was going to kill the guy. So when you hear the shot and then suddenly, bam, he's dead, or you think he's dead. And then when Thénardier is like, oh, by the way, Javert didn't kill himself, or Javert would kill himself, no one else did. Then he's like, oh, Valjean's not a bad guy anymore. And wait, he saved my life? You're a villain. It's like, you knew that all along. That was never a surprise. But because your father's like, Thénardier saved my life. It's like, actually, he was stealing from his pockets at the time, but no one knew that. Like, bad judge of character, to be honest, with Marius.
He's not, Marius is not the most enlightened character in the book, for sure.
Not the sharpest, was it, pencil in the box or something?
Yeah.
I don't think he's supposed to.
He's blinded by love.
Yeah. He's just
and also,
yeah.
Yeah, they are both criminals in that sense. They have to.
Yeah, that is a good point.
They have no choice. And it's true. They have very different intentions with their personas.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah,
that's true.
I had never drawn that. I didn't really draw that parallel that they both had different personas and one is good and one is evil. I didn't even think about that.
I didn't until Naomi said it. I was like, wait, Naomi.
Amanda says Marius was a doofus.
Yes. Yeah. And Cosette loves them to the ends of the age, apparently, even though they barely talk.
Yeah.
Young love.
Cosette she seemed so different at the end with all of her teasing and like poutiness, trying to get the truth from the men.
I'm not a Cosette fan.
Yeah,
me neither. I don't like her as a character. She's just not a very deep character either.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't feel Cosette is.
She's more of a plot device for sure.
Yeah, I felt like she was kind of the angelic tie that made all of them come together. And so when it came to, I don't know, drawing all the plot lines into a perfect bow in the end, making everyone happy, that was Cosette. You know, making Valjean happy in the end. His daughter was back with him, making Marius happy in the end. Cosette was with him. That was perfect. But otherwise, she didn't really have any purpose. Even during the whole revolution bit or the barricade bit, she was just in her home, wondering where everyone was, and that was it. I was like,
yeah.
My problem with Cosette's portrayal is like Marius really only likes her because she's pretty. That's really the only information we're really given is she's cute. Like that's really all we know about why Marius likes her. You know, it's like a love at first sight kind of thing, and
yeah.
It's just she's not well developed other than her as a kid having this tragic backstory like that. I feel like I don't know, could have done maybe even more with, but when Cosette doesn't make sense because she has this tragic backstory, but then she grows up as kind of like a flighty, like I don't know, sheltered, and she is sheltered by her father, but I just felt like she doesn't have grit when she's older, and she had this underlying backstory where she could have had grit as an older character.
Yeah, like Fontaine has a lot of grit. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, it's like she forgets everything that happened to her as a child, which also doesn't make sense to me because how could you forget such a traumatic childhood? And then as she's an adult, she just kind of like doesn't remember that, you know, it just doesn't that part does not make sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because he writes trauma so well in other characters, but yet he doesn't write it well in Cosette as an adult.
Yeah.
And she won't forget that. Like that will not just go away in spite of, you know, love and care and support. Yeah. She's definitely an archetype, like an angel archetype in the book, as opposed to an actual character or actual person.
Yeah.
Like many of the men are, or even Eponine. Eponine is, I feel like, a much more fleshed out character.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very interesting because she starts like as much as a villain and then she turns into a very complex character that we see. But yeah, because that's very one note.
Yeah.
Yeah. Being sheltered in a comic could have had a lot of that, but she also didn't really grow up super sheltered in her developmental years. And I'm going to be really like super nerdy and be like educational ECE person here. But like she spent her real formative years in a, first of all, with her mother who was struggling to support her. And then also in with people who were like forcing her to do all sorts of labor. So she really spent her after real formative years in the convent. So that would have been after the fact. So it would have had something, but not overly much with like dealing with those real formative developmental, like street smarts levels, in my opinion.
But she was also like abused a lot. Like she suffered so much abuse. That really does affect children a lot.
And I've seen kids in my center like who was a foster kid and who had a lot of abuse, and that doesn't just go away. Like that sticks with you. So yeah, it's something that will stay with you for a long time, in spite of love and care and however much sheltering it goes into it.
He showed it really well when Cosette was first taken by Jean Valjean. But then she like attached to him so quickly. It was like he gave her a doll and then she trusted him entirely. It was like, I don't know if that's realistic. Maybe it is. I haven't worked a lot with children with trauma, but to me it sounds like I don't think attachments happen that quickly when your childhood, you don't form any attachments in your childhood.
No. There'd be some
Earlier
fighting
years.
there.
Yeah.
There'd be some distrust for sure.
Yeah.
But no, it's very fascinating how he looked at it all, but maybe it's also his lack of understanding that childhood trauma. Because I don't imagine that he had that. But I haven't looked into that myself. So
they didn't. I mean, they didn't think of children the same way back then either. They thought of children as,
or women.
yeah, or women for that matter. They just didn't see them as or as complex.
Yep, she was 7 or 8, so she would have a lot of memories of that kind of trauma.
Yeah, she totally would have remembered the Thenardiers, and it just seemed like as she got older, she was like, "What? I had a life before this?" Like
when she didn't recognize Thenardier by his voice, I was like, "Okay, that's not realistic." She would remember that.
That would be a trigger for her entirely,
for sure.
Yeah, but yeah, they didn't think that way about children back then.
There were other characters that were so well fleshed out that it was kind of like, well, yeah, she's not the best fleshed out, but whatever.
Yeah, the male characters were much more fleshed out though, and I found the people at the barricade fascinating, like the way that they had set it up, and then I can't even remember their specific names now. It's been a week, and I read a lot of books since then, but what is it? Alejandro, the E guy, E and then C, they both were, because you just finished it, right, Victoria? So you would have a fresher memory.
Are you talking about Enjolras and whatever?
When they died together, that was so touching. When he's like, "I'm gonna die with you. 2 birds with 1 stone." That was like the end of it all. They were going down swinging.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The whole barricade scene was so interesting. But I thought Valjean also showed his true cunning in that, when he also was like, "I'm going to grab that mattress." And he snuck out and he managed to get it without being shot. And he like finagled it back in. And they were all like, "How did I do this?" And he's like, he just showed up randomly, gave up his uniform. And then they're like, "Who is this guy? Okay." Clearly he's here for the fight. But he didn't kill anybody because he would shoot to warn.
I'm sure it's obvious to everyone because it's very heavy-handed, but like Jean Valjean is the Christ figure in many points. He's the savior in many points of the book. So that's just the role he plays. Miraculously saving everyone.
Died. It was like Hamlet. Everybody just dies.
Yeah, you're expecting everyone to die in that section. When someone survives, you're like, "Oh, wow, that's lucky." And then they died later. Like, "Oh, never mind."
That's lucky.
Oh, they didn't get scratched. Oh, never mind.
Too soon.
I spoke too soon. I thought maybe. Yeah. No. And then after the fact, there were so many things that happened with the grandfather and like the money and all those interesting scenes. I thought it was an interesting way to wrap up the whole story. What were your thoughts on all those relationships and people that we met after?
It really hurts my heart when old people suffer, like more so than any other kind of character. That's just always how it's been for me. If an old person is suffering, that will just waterworks. So I was really sad when, like, the grandfather suggests to Marius that you could just make Cosette, your a mistress, and Marius is like, "I am like mortally offended. I'm just gonna march away." And the grandfather's like, and he's like so upset. And then when Marius comes in and he thinks Marius is dead, he's like so upset. It was just like, okay, this is wearing on the heartstrings. Not saying that he's like a perfect character or anything, but in the sense of a morality sense, but like, it was just hurting my heart. And then at the end with Valjean, obviously, that was hard to read.
I think with the grandfather, you see like the different generations that have very different ideas, but like they still, like, the grandfather still cares very much about Marius, even though they have these like complete polar opposite ideals. And I think that's maybe the point of the grandfather as a character in the book, just like the reconciliation of the two generations.
Yes, I think you're totally right.
Yeah, and they both had to compromise and meet halfway. Like, Marius couldn't live anymore the way he just totally wanted to, and the grandfather couldn't just be in his, like, I'm right all the time bubble. They had to come together in the middle.
Very good point. I don't think Marius was really interested in being a baron, but if you want if you want to marry Cosette, you gotta do your responsible thing.
Yeah. No, the grandfather had to like reveal his heart to him, but in order to do that, he had to be like authentic. And I loved how he was like, he was like, I'm gonna marry Cosette, and grandfather's like, okay. He was like, I was actually fighting you on that.
Yeah.
Never mind. That was just so funny. He was like ready for battle, and again, it was like, there's no battle here. You can marry whoever you want. I learned that battle a long time ago. That's not a battle to fight you on. So that was sweet. No. And then the money suddenly appeared. And I liked learning how they had all the money. I liked learning how she had so much money, and like that was revealed. Yeah. Because I was like, where's this money coming from? Is it legit? Is it not?
Yeah. Part of the happy ending, like, oh, there's money and a wedding.
Yeah. We have to get some happiness out of this book.
I love what Tiffany said about how the generations think and express feelings and love in different ways. So there's a lot of miscommunication. Because, like, the main thing that separated Marius and his grandfather, not the main thing, but, like, a big part of it was politics. And, like, I think that's so true today still. Like, I think whenever we think, like, oh, we're so much more divided today, it's like, well, I mean, if you look at this story, like, they were clearly very divided.
That's a good point, Christy. Yeah. Those divisions have always been there and always will be there.
Yeah. We just have to love, even though we disagree, and try and communicate through these things, because it is possible.
Especially when it's like a 2-generation gap. It's not just like father and son. It's like father and grandson, or grandfather and grandson. It's a lot different because you're talking like 80-year-old and 20-year-old sometimes, or however it goes. It's a lot harder. So I know with my own grandmother, it's sometimes I need to say things in a way that she'll understand differently because she's older. So yeah, it's different.
I was reading a book called Letters to Russia, and in it there's this, it's written by a man named Custine, Astolphe de Custine, and he was a child of the nobility during the Reign of Terror. And so it's really interesting reading from his perspective because he experienced that, and his perspectives on like the aristocracy and like why he feels that that's important, as opposed to just a total constitutional rule. It gave me kind of an insight into the grandfather, reading from his perspective, because that's not something you really hear these days. It's such the respect for class, but after going to Russia, he comes back and he's like, okay, constitutionalism all the way. So he changes his mind about that. But coming from France, he really was very entrenched in the view that it's important to have these class distinctions, and the aristocracy is there for a reason and stuff like that.
Interesting.
That's fascinating. Yeah. Yeah, that perspective definitely changes your mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Cool. He was such a victim of the revolution that I think it was hard for him to, like, his family was killed and stuff like that. So yeah, it was hard for him to at first come to that conclusion.
That makes sense.
Yeah. It's also, I think, important to remember that, like, the French Revolution happened for so long, and I kept forgetting that too for the grandfather's sake, that you know, with being aristocracy, like there's like his family was being killed during that time period. So after I was like, how does this impact Marius and Cosette as well? So I mean, I still don't have an answer to that, and I was just thinking about it, but it would be an interesting thought to, like, you know, now that they're part of that, how does this impact their family? You know, after
that's true.
It's an interesting thought process, but I'm pretty sure, and I'm not very clear on this completely, but I'm pretty sure that that was more towards the end of the French Revolution. So
I think so.
they might be safe, but anyone who actually has an answer for that, I would love to hear an answer. So yeah, but yeah, it is hilarious that Tiffany points out that she wouldn't have left money because that was poor.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then suddenly Cosette has all the money, but Marius and Cosette don't care because they just want each other to be healthy and together. So yeah, the aunt was an interesting character. She was like all for them being one family, and then suddenly she's like, but Cosette's there, I don't like this. And then suddenly she's like all against Cosette. She was an interesting woman to read about. Yeah. Any other thoughts? I feel like there's so many things.
Yeah.
I can't even wrap my head around everything that happened in this book, but we also covered so much and so many other things. Like so many discussions.
There's just some really beautiful writing at the end. There's just some really beautiful passages and the speeches, like Jean Valjean's death speech, dying speech.
Yeah.
There's some really beautiful passages, and I just really enjoyed the writing. Very powerful writing.
Yeah. Hugo really gets you with the words. He knew how to write a sentence.
Yes. How to make you cry, how to really drag on the emotions. Like,
yeah.
Man, he's so good.
Yeah.
And it really does make up
Javert in his last scene, that was something. I love how he's like, someone treated me with kindness, not logic. So I'm going to use logic to commit suicide.
Yeah.
It was like such an interesting thing, but I also loved how he went and then he's like, I'm going to write this note about things we should improve with our justice system first and then go commit suicide. Like, that was so interesting to me.
What were you going to say, Christy?
It's not related to the scene though, so you guys should talk about this scene
go
first.
ahead.
I don't want to interrupt. I'm sorry. I was looking at some of my notes. So this is also from Letters from Russia, but it's so okay. Listen to this. In these heroic times, death became an exhibition in which. Oh wait, sorry, wrong quote. I just have a list of them. Okay, supernatural virtue passed unobserved in a time when the sons of France were as lavish of their heroism as they had been of their genius 50 years before. So I thought that was the supernatural virtue passing unnoticed. I was like, Jean Valjean! I was like, did he read Les Mis? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So true. And yeah, Amanda says that the book is like transcends time. It's so true. This book is relevant.
Yes.
So a lot of the themes are relevant.
Yeah. Social justice, the prison system, all these things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No. And I was crying. Definitely cried with Gavroche and so many other things, and Valjean's death, and I cried at weird moments too, but I was crying.
I'm not a book crier. I didn't cry, but it doesn't mean I wasn't emotional. I just am not a book crier.
I'm not an overly book crier. So when I cried a little bit in sections, that was enough for me to be crying at a book.
Yeah.
I was on a walk when I read the part about Gavroche, and I instantly voxed Naomi Victoria, and I was like, what? Why? This is awful. I was so mad.
It's so sad sometimes. No. When I cry in a book, it's because I'm actually staying up too late and my body says I need to go to sleep. That's how my body tells me I need to go to bed, is when my eyes start crying. That's my tell to go to bed. Yeah. No, this is about Javert. His seems so one-track mind, and his entire world got rocked because he was forced to see things that were not so black and white. I felt so bad for him. Yeah.
Yeah. It's sad that, well, I mean, I guess he maybe would feel like he's made so many mistakes that he couldn't forgive himself and he just deserved to die. Like, that's kind of how I read Javert's suicide, as far as like when he realizes he might be wrong, that he feels maybe the weight of his wrongness and like just gives up, you know. I don't know how you guys read that.
I kind of read it like he couldn't live with the world as his brain was now accepting it, or the way that like he suddenly things were now going to be. Like a convict could be right and a lawman could be wrong. And now his reality was shifting and he had only known one reality. So he couldn't literally accept that, which then was an awful way to move forward. But that was the only way he could think about how to move forward. So I felt awful to read that. But then he was also just so decided in that. That was so Javert to just go ahead and just do it. Even though it was such a Javert move to just like be like, no, my life is like just sucks because I let a convict go, but I can't arrest him because he was kind to me. But I can't like let him go because he's a convict, so I'm gonna go kill myself. It was just such a Javert move. Like, yeah. I felt so sad reading that.
Mm-hmm.
Again, another very nuanced male character.
Yeah. Well, and we don't get his inner thoughts, right? So we can kind of speculate of what was going on with him, because we don't really get an inner dialogue or anything from Javert. We just see his reaction. Yeah.
And then Amanda says that he points out multiple times the sway of the sin sits on the creator of darkness, not the one who sins. So, yeah. Lots of thoughts. And he couldn't reconcile his core beliefs with how he feels now and choices he had to make. Yeah. No. When he left Valjean's home because, like, after saying goodbye to Cosette, right? Then that shocked Valjean because it was so out of character for him. And that shocked Javert too. So it was like all of these things were like, what's happening in this world? Because it was not normal for this character who's been antagonizing and chasing this whole book. But it was very poetic at the end. Sadly poetic.
That's a good point that Tiffany made, because, you know, if he's lived his entire past life with this view in mind, he's probably done some things that now to him just seem wrong and perhaps unforgivable, like purposeless.
That's what I'm thinking too. That he has guilt. And he didn't know how to reconcile that guilt.
How many past criminals has he also chased like this that we haven't seen? We're only seeing one. How many other criminals has he chased because they stole a loaf of bread or because they, you know, did something little like this because they have to go back to prison? So that would be awful guilt. He can't show a little bit of mercy. Yeah. This is why I'm in book hangover, because I'm like, what do I read now? This book is like giving me so many thoughts, and I'm never in book hangover unless the book is awful. It was not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Man.
Sadly poetic describes Hugo's writing entirely. Yes, that was a good description, Naomi.
Yeah.
Very sadly poetic.
Just wait till y'all read Hunchback.
Oh goodness, that's not our next read though, right? At least in my Count Monte Cristo, Christy. That's different.
I might
We
need
don't
a
have
little Hugo break. I need a Hugo break before Hunchback.
Please.
Probably smart.
Yeah. So the note that he wrote was so much compassion based, which I really loved. That it was like prisoners should keep their shoes on when they are having to wait to be booked, or when they pay for a chair, they should get their chair, kind of thing.
Yeah, that note was so like cold and unfeeling, and just like a laundry list kind of is a weird last note.
I actually re-listened to that this morning because I was like, I can't remember exactly what was in it, but I wanted to kind of be refreshed on it. And it sounds so like this is what we should do, but at the same time, it was also like, yeah, when prisoners are booked, they're not allowed to wear shoes, and they go to prison with coughs. And then when prisoners pay for chairs, they're not allowed them. And it was like, these are things that should be given because of human courtesy, or because they have been like they have paid for them as like part of their expenses. So it's like these are compassionate things that we should be doing already. And it was like his last ditch effort almost, or I saw it that way, to be one of his last things before he goes to kind of maybe right the wrongs he's done in the past. I don't know. But very interesting to reread that this morning, just before we got on, to make it fresh in my mind what he did. Thought he was a very complex character towards the end.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to put a quote in the chat about kind of a perspective on the nobility that maybe makes it easier to understand the grandfather's respect for rank and stuff like that. Like, at least how he was thinking. Not that we're like, oh yeah, that's true, nobility comes through the blood, but yeah, I'm just going to put it
How
in there.
his thought process works.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because that's something I never understood. I was just like, why would you think that?
Yeah. One thing I did look up and I saw that was fascinating was that Hugo kind of is throwing shade at the American slave trade by making Thénardier a slave trader at the end.
That was so sad. I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
There's Marius again, start putting his money in the wrong place.
It's true. And I thought it was also
what a
interesting
doofus.
Hugo's like bringing light to a bad topic and being like, hey, guess what else is going wrong in the world? Slaves.
Yeah. Some world context there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's interesting. Very bad character. He gets to do more bad things.
Mm-hmm.
On brand.
Mm-hmm.
Very on brand. Yeah. Man.
I'm excited to see the quote.
Yes.
It's going to be in several parts. Yeah, sorry.
No, it's all good.
It's part 1.
Yeah, there's part 1.
I'll put it up for everyone to see if they can't get the live chat.
He's talking specifically about the social revolution in England, but I think it's just applicable about how they were viewing class, not race. And I read too that it was class that mattered in France and not race. So color didn't matter like it did in America. It was all about class. It was such a big deal, and it's a little bit hard for me as an American to understand, but again, this kind of helps.
Yeah. You're right, Tiffany.
Not that I understand the racial one.
everyone's ending was on brand in this book. The twins, the heroes. It was kind of perfect. Hugo did a perfect rounding up of everybody.
I know, my dog is crying.
No worries.
Sorry, it's taking me so long. It's a very long. It's like a whole paragraph.
It's a very interesting quote.
Oh, good. I'm glad you find it too. It's just such a mindset. I was like really surprised when I was reading this Letters from Russia, and it was all about the French Revolution. Like the whole first 10% is just like all about the French Revolution.
You gotta love when the stars align with the different books you're reading.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like your other Sewers book? Or
Yeah.
was that your book too?
Yeah.
That was the Gulag Archipelago. Oh my gosh.
It's so funny when books just connect in a very unique way and make it more poignant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Nothing more than a class that is rich enough to pay for wearing a certain dress.
Yeah.
That's what he was complaining, that England had lost its true sense of nobility after the social revolution, because a nobleman didn't refer to somebody who was truly noble in any way. It was just all about the money. You could buy it. It's a title you could buy. But like he says at different points that nobility passes through the blood. You could try to train and educate a king, but unless he has that blood, you know, he can't be a true royalty, you know? It was just like, alrighty then. Sure.
Yeah.
That's what they mean, I guess, when they talk about ancient bloodlines and all that.
Yeah, it is the idea of you're divinely appointed, and that a family would be also divinely appointed.
Yeah.
I guess that's also why Valjean makes such a big deal about not being Cosette's father in the book, because Marius's grandfather would make a big deal about that.
Yes,
like, he would be
that's
super
true.
upset and lash out in all the kinds of ways, because like he doesn't sign. Bye, Tammy. Like he doesn't sign the paper because like he fakes the injury, but because he doesn't sign the paper and it's like, actually, I'm not her father, I'm her adoptive father. Like all of those things in order to make it okay for her to still marry into the family and not be a problem. It's very interesting that like that would also play into this aspect of his mentality of born in, like your bloodline.
That's a really good point. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah. I try to be as well prepared as possible. So I look up summaries and read things because I'm not super smart when it comes to like French literature.
Yeah, me neither.
Oh, you're reading a Stewart book too, Carrie?
Oh my gosh.
Oh, man. All the Sewers.
I mean, yeah, it would be a major issue. Like,
yeah,
especially affecting the water back then. And like they didn't have filtration systems really as much as we do now. Like the sewage system affected the water that you drank and lived in, you know. So
yeah.
Like a big deal.
Very big deal.
Big deal.
Oh, gross. No. And I remember in the sewer, or not in the sewer, but when he was in the sewage or in the sewers and he was like, they described the quicksand feeling. And then I'm like, this is going to go bad. And then it started like sinking. I was like, this is not going well. I was like, I started feeling claustrophobic when I was reading. And that was so well done by Hugo. But I was like, this is a gross section to read. So awful. I'm glad that you're appreciating the context because I don't try to bring much context. I just try to read summaries, and then I'm happy if I understand what I'm saying.
We all have like different areas where we were focusing on with this book, which was so cool. Like Victoria doing the music, and also you keep making connections in the text, Victoria. That I'm like, oh, that's a very good point.
I did.
Yeah, like, yeah, you just made like several. Like every time I hear you talk, you're like, yeah, I think the grandfather is supposed to represent the class divide. And I'm like, yeah, I think you're right.
We're all bringing up points to each other. It's like, all right. Awesome. Yeah. The sewer scene was so gross and yucky.
And I think he just found structures so interesting because in Hunchback, like a lot of the big essays that he has in there, which are not quite as frequent as they are in Les Mis, but he always is talking about the architecture and why Gothic architecture is better than Renaissance architecture and, you know, all these things. And he has long form opinions on these things. So I think he just finds structures in general very interesting.
He also talked about that bit of the nunnery, if I'm remembering right, like how they were designed, right? Like with the cells or something. It's been a while since we read that section, but I felt like that was talking about how the cells were very similar to like prison cells. So that's also kind of an architecture topic.
Yeah.
And he always describes a room like very in detail, like Marius's room when he was staying with near the Thénardiers, like right next to them. You get a real good picture of those rooms.
And the bishop at the very beginning, we get a lot of really detailed descriptions of his surroundings and like the simplicity of his surroundings and how he tries to make it simple, like reflects his heart for like giving away his possessions and stuff. So it's like that, the external representing the internal.
Yes.
So it did have an architecture section. Got it. Tiffany remembers it well. And then they also had in the bishop section, they also had the first home that he was in because they described that one well because then he switched to the simplistic house. I remember that. So yes, he likes describing houses or locations very in depth. He also describes the inn where they're staying, like the barricading. He describes a lot of places. It's very nice to get a full view. But
you'll definitely get that with Hugo.
This is a lot of words.
You'll get more than you even wanted.
Honestly, though, I am thankful I've read Tolkien first because that prepped me for a long-winded person who has beautiful writing. Yeah.
That's true, Tiffany. Oh, about the home.
The other one?
Describing about
the homes. Yes.
Yeah.
Very well described. His poor home versus his rich home.
Yeah.
Yeah. The group reads are awesome. Everyone has different takes.
Yes.
Very helpful. I know I got so much more out of Lemez than like reading with everyone than reading just by myself. That would have been so much more tedious and a lot less rich.
It was always such a reward to have the live show at the end of like a really super long section. It's like, woohoo! Now I can talk about it. I made it.
Yeah. It's like the carrot.
Yes, exactly.
Keep going.
Just 200 pages, then you get there.
Yeah. Just keep going.
Yeah. So, we did it. It's exciting.
So watch along. Or did you put it in the Discord already?
Yes, there is a poll up if you would like to participate in a watch along. We are voting on the day and time and also on the adaptation. There's just 2 options for each. So if you want to watch, we're going to decide between the 2012 and the 1998 versions. So go vote. I'll leave it up till Friday. Till next Friday, and then we'll go from there. I think we'll probably do it in the Discord if I can figure out how to screen share. So that's my plan for now. I'll let you know if that changes. But yes, go vote if you want to watch the movie with us.
Woohoo!
It'll be fun.
Woo!
Yeah. And we can all talk about either how correct it is or incorrect or just revel in the characters.
Yeah.
And we can, if we watch the musical one, are they both musical or just one musical?
No, one's musical.
Just one. If we do the musical one, we can hear Victoria deconstruct all the music and why she doesn't like it.
Complain about it.
Yeah.
No, I promise not to complain if we watch that one.
It did lead us here, even though it's not the best musically. I have heard the Broadway version is fantastic, and I do want to watch that one day.
Yes. Well, I mean, the film, the 2012 is the Broadway version, but it's just they just didn't pick good singers for the actual version. So that's my gripe with the 2012 film. But yes, actually going to see the musical like live, there's usually better people.
Yeah. Yes. So go vote so you can have a pick. We have 2 different times, so that should be hopefully giving some variety.
Yeah. Hopefully it will work for the majority.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can all suffer together with the music if it's not great. I personally enjoy the couple of the singers a lot more.
Yeah,
but,
don't listen to me. I'm a picky snob, so don't listen to me.
If you listen to Victoria, then at least go listen to the music that she put on her channel yesterday. She did a yes, so that you can trust her musical opinions. If you go listen to that, you'll understand.
Yeah.
I've never heard a flute song more beautiful than when you play it. I'm always just like, wow, it's so good.
You're so sweet. Thank you.
Yes. We do trust your opinion, Victoria. Don't worry.
It's okay. Take my opinion with a grain of salt, grain of sand. What's the saying? I don't know.
I think it's a grain of salt.
Grain of salt.
All right. Should we wrap up this final live stream?
I'm gonna cry. No.
Until next time, we'll do another one maybe.
Yes.
Next year we'll do
another one.
a different one.
Yeah, let's do it.
For another time.
Yeah. Maybe Town of Monte Cristo. That was talked about last time. I personally would be down for that. That'd be fun to read.
Which one?
I would be down too.
We did talk about the Count of Monte Cristo.
Yeah. I want to read that.
Next year.
I'd be down.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's
Are
do
you promising here or are you not?
I'm promising. I want to read it.
We can talk about it more, but it'd be fun to do another one. Anyways. So we'll sign off here. It was great to read with everyone, and we will do a watch along soon. Okay. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, guys.